Antoine, a man in his 40s, had been feeling the need to escape his daily routine for some time. Tired of the incessant noise of the city and its frenetic pace, he decided to go camping for the weekend, accompanied by his faithful dog, Max. This getaway in the heart of nature was exactly what he needed to recharge. That morning he got up early, filled with excitement at the thought of this adventure. The light rain falling on his apartment windows added a touch of soothing melancholy. He took the time to savor a hot coffee, sitting by the window, watching the raindrops draw random patterns on the glass. In the preceding weeks, Antoine had carefully prepared his escape. Thanks to some savings, he had bought all the necessary gear for comfortable camping. He had even found an old 4x4 in good condition, perfect for rough terrain. In his apartment, a rainproof tent, a warm sleeping bag, waterproof clothing, and various camping equipment were ready to be loaded. After breakfast, Antoine meticulously began packing his bag. With water, he checked that he had everything he needed: provisions for himself and Max, a small first aid kit, an axe for chopping wood, and of course, a flashlight and firelighters. He also packed some dry logs, knowing that making a fire in the rain could be a challenge. Max, sensing his master's agitation, kept circling him, tail wagging happily. Backpack buckled, he put on his rain jacket and attached Max's leash to his collar. The car was parked at the bottom of the building. Antoine went down the stairs with Max at his heels, and they reached the old 4x4 loaded with all the camping equipment. He checked one last time that he hadn't forgotten anything, then settled Max on the back seat. The engine of the 4x4 purred softly as it started, and they left the city in a light but persistent rain. On the road, the landscapes passed under a veil of rain, giving an almost mystical atmosphere to the surrounding hills and forests. The radio played soft music, perfect for accompanying this journey towards tranquility. Antoine occasionally glanced at Max, comfortably settled and gazing curiously out the window. The drive unfolded without incident. Each kilometer traveled took him a little further from urban stress and closer to the peace he sought.
The road wound through dense forests, the trees forming a green and humid canopy above their heads. Antoine already felt lighter, as if the rain were washing away his worries. Finally, after several hours of driving, Antoine and Max arrived at the edge of the forest where they would camp. He parked the 4x4 on the side of the road, took a deep breath of the fresh, humid air, and then opened the door for Max, who jumped out enthusiastically. Antoine retrieved his backpack and checked one last time that everything was in order. The duo was ready for their adventure in the rain, in this majestic and soothing natural setting. Antoine stretched, breathing deeply the fresh, humid air. He was finally there, far from the city, ready to recharge. He opened the trunk of the human god in his 4x4 and began unloading all the equipment. The light rain was still falling, but it didn't discourage him. On the contrary, he found the weather soothing and refreshing. First, he took out the large tent he had bought especially for this trip. Sturdy and waterproof, it was perfect for the weather conditions they were about to face. Antoine chose a spot near a small stream where the ground was flat and clear enough. Max pranced around him, exploring every nook and cranny and regularly returning to Antoine as if to make sure everything was all right. "Don't worry, buddy, we'll be fine here," said Antoine, patting his dog's head methodically. He unfolded the tent and began to pitch it. He planted the stakes in the damp ground, tightened the guy lines, and adjusted each corner to ensure everything was stable. The rain fell gently, but Antoine remained focused on his task, appreciating each step of this setup, which brought him a little closer to the tranquility he was seeking. Once the tent was pitched, Antoine set up the inside. He spread out the sleeping bags.
Max's sleeping gear was arranged in a corner, and a space was set up for their equipment. He took care to create a comfortable and dry environment, knowing that the rain could last for several days. With the inside of the tent nearby, Antoine began preparing the outside. He erected a small shelter using a tarp and a few extra stakes, creating a protected area where he could make a fire without being too exposed to the rain. This task completed, he gathered dry wood from the surrounding area, taking care to choose branches thick enough to last all evening. Max, always by his side, helped in his own way, carrying small branches in his mouth. "Work, Max!" exclaimed Antoine with a delighted smile, pleased to see his companion so involved. The camp was finally set up. Antoine stood up and contemplated the work accomplished. The rain was still falling, but it was now only a background murmur, a soothing accompaniment to this scene of tranquility. Antoine opened the trunk of the 4x4 and took out a cooler in which he had stored some beers. He opened one and raised his bottle. "To Max," he said. "To our adventure, my friend." They both sat down under the awning, Antoine savoring his beer, while Max rested his head on his knees, his eyes heavy. Despite the rain, the forest seemed alive and welcoming. Antoine could already feel the tensions of daily life fading away, replaced by a feeling of peace. This was exactly what he had come for. Beers savored, Antoine set about preparing dinner. The rain continued to fall gently, adding a soothing touch to the already serene atmosphere of the campsite. He got up, gathered some dry logs he had prepared earlier, and headed towards the sheltered awning where he planned to make a fire. With practiced movements, he began by arranging small branches and twigs in a pyramid shape, then placed firelighters in the center. He took a lighter from his pocket and, with a deft gesture, lit the firelighters. The small flames danced quickly, gaining intensity as they licked the twigs and branches. The fire crackled merrily, its flames casting shadows on the surrounding trees. The heat began to spread, warming the humid air and adding a touch of comforting warmth. Antoine gradually added larger logs, ensuring the fire would remain well-fed. Max, ever curious, watched his master's movements intently, his tail wagging gently. "You'll see, Max, tonight we're going to eat well," said Antoine with a smile, already feeling comforted by the thought of a good meal. Antoine went to the cooler to take out the provisions he had carefully prepared. He took out sausages, peppers, onions, and zucchini, as well as a small bottle of olive oil and some spices. He placed a metal grill over the embers and put the sausages on it, which immediately began to char. The aromas of grilled meat quickly mingled with the fresh air, provoking an immediate reaction from Max, who sat down by the fire, his eyes shining with excitement. "Patience, my friend, it will be ready soon," he said. Antoine, stroking his dog's head, drizzled a little olive oil over the vegetables and seasoned them with salt, pepper, and aromatic herbs, before placing them on the grill next to the sausages. The peppers, onions, and zucchini began to grill gently, releasing their sweet and slightly caramelized aroma. The crackling of the fire, the hissing of the cooking wand, and the tantalizing smells created a perfect sensory symphony. Antoine savored every moment, appreciating the simplicity and richness of this time in the heart of nature. He carefully monitored the cooking, turning the sausages and vegetables so they browned evenly. The rain continued to fall gently, but it had become a mere background murmur, almost hypnotic. Feeling serenity wash over him, Antoine realized how precious this moment was. He was far from the stress of daily life, surrounded by the raw beauty of nature in the company of his faithful Max.
When the sausages were perfectly grilled and the vegetables tender and slightly caramelized, Antoine removed the grill from the fire, prepared a plate for himself, and arranged the sausages and vegetables were carefully arranged, and another plate was set aside for Max, who cut the sausages into pieces suitable for his four-legged companion. "Enjoy your meal, Max," he said, placing his dog's plate in front of him. Max immediately pounced on his meal, devouring each piece with obvious pleasure. Antoine, for his part, took the time to savor each bite, appreciating the simple yet delicious flavors of this outdoor meal. After dinner, Antoine quickly cleaned the utensils and added some wood to the fire to keep the flames burning. He then took a book from his backpack, a novel he had been eager to read for a long time but had never found the time to open. Settled comfortably under the awning, he immersed himself in his reading, the firelight dancing on the pages of the book. Max, meanwhile, lay down at his feet, his eyes half closed, soothed by the soft sound of the rain and the distant calls of nocturnal animals. The hours passed peacefully. Antoine let himself be carried away by the words, each page turning. Sinking deeper into a state of relaxation, the outside world, with its worries and obligations, seemed distant, almost unreal. Here, in the heart of nature, there was only tranquility, the simplicity of the present moment. As night fell, Antoine felt fatigue creeping in. He closed his book, got up, and stretched his stiff muscles. He glanced one last time at the fire, making sure it was completely extinguished for the night. Then he slipped into the tent with Max, his sleeping bag already packed and ready. Lying on his back, listening to the gentle patter of rain on the tent canvas, Antoine felt a profound peace wash over him. Max, nestled against him, provided comforting warmth. This moment, so simple yet so precious, was exactly what he needed, far from the hustle and bustle of the city, in harmony with nature.
Antoine quickly fell asleep, his heart light and his mind at peace. The first night in the great outdoors, in the rain, had lived up to all its promises. Lulled by the sounds of the forest, Antoine and Max slept peacefully. Ready to welcome another day of adventure and serenity, Antoine woke up the next morning to the soft, steady sound of rain on the tent canvas. The night had been restful, and he felt revitalized. Max, snuggled against him, lifted his head and looked at him with still, sleepy eyes. Antoine stretched, savoring the warmth of the sleeping bag before getting up quietly so as not to disturb Max. He stepped out of the tent and was immediately struck by the fresh, damp air. The forest, shrouded in mist and bathed in rain, had a mystical and soothing beauty. After preparing a quick breakfast of hot coffee and a few biscuits, Antoine decided to take advantage of this unique atmosphere for a walk with Max. He put on his rain gear and checked that everything was in order at the campsite before setting off. Max, excited at the prospect of adventure, bounced around Antoine, ready to explore. "Let's go, old man," said Antoine, attaching the leash to his dog. They set off on a narrow path that wound through the forest, their footsteps echoing softly on the ground. The ground was wet, the rain falling in fine drops, creating a natural symphony on the leaves and branches. Each step Antoine and Max took stirred up a light splash of water and mud, but this only added to the charm of their walk. The colors of the forest were intensified by the humidity, the deep green of the ferns, the dark brown of the tree trunks, and the silvery gray of the moss-covered stones. Antoine took the time to immerse himself in this peaceful atmosphere, observing the small details that made this forest so alive.
He noticed the raindrops beading on the spider webs, sparkling like pearls in the diffuse daylight. The birds, sheltered under the branches, sang soft melodies, adding a musical touch to this natural tableau. Max, for his part, sniffed every nook and cranny, curious to discover all the scents the rain had revealed. From time to time, he stopped to lift his nose and smell the air, ears pricked and eyes shining with curiosity. Anton and Max walked without hurrying, savoring every moment of this walk. They crossed a small stream whose clear, fast-flowing water reflected the gray sky. Anton crouched down and plunged his hand into the water. Fresh, and feeling the tranquil strength of the current, Max amused himself by paddling in the stream, happily splashing all around him. The forest was full of life despite the rain. Anton spotted squirrels hopping from branch to branch, birds taking refuge under the foliage, and even a deer that discreetly moved away as they passed. Each encounter added a magical dimension to this experience. After several hours of walking, Anton and Max decided to return to the campsite. The return journey was just as peaceful, the rain having barely let up by the time they arrived. Anton noted with satisfaction that everything had remained in order despite the continuous rain. Anton prepared a simple but nourishing lunch: a salad made with fresh vegetables he had brought, rustic bread, and a few slices of cured ham. For Max, he had prepared a portion of special dog food, enriched with a few pieces of meat he knew to be his companion's favorites. Sitting in a camping chair, Anton savored his meal, listening to the rain fall. The drops created a soothing symphony, gently tapping on the tarp, from the awning and on the surrounding leaves. Max ate peacefully at his feet, savoring each bite with obvious pleasure. After lunch, Anton felt invigorated. Leaving his dog to rest, he decided to take some nature photos to send to his family back in the city. He took his camera from his bag and ventured into the surrounding area, searching for landscapes and details that would capture the essence of this getaway.
The rain created picturesque scenes: water droplets suspended from the leaves, colorful mushrooms growing on tree trunks, and mirrored reflections in the puddles. Antoine took the time to carefully frame each photo, appreciating the serene silence of the forest. Once satisfied with his shots, he returned to the campsite with a smile, eager to share these moments with his loved ones. He decided to spend the rest of the afternoon maintaining the campsite and preparing firewood for the evening. He went to a nearby wooded area, axe in hand, and began chopping branches to fuel the fire. The physical work, though demanding, had an almost magical effect. Each axe blow resonated through the forest, mingling with the natural sounds of birds and rain. Max, ever curious, trotted around him, sniffing here and there, but keeping a safe distance. Antoine made sure to take regular breaks to pet his dog and check that he was all right. He carried the cut wood back to the camp and carefully arranged it downwind to keep it dry. As evening began to fall, Antoine lit a fire to prepare dinner. He chose a few logs from those he had cut and skillfully placed them to create a stable hearth. The first sparks appeared quickly, and soon a bright, hot fire crackled merrily. For dinner, Antoine decided to prepare something special. He took out a cast-iron pan and melted some butter in it. The flames cast dancing shadows, adding a warm atmosphere to the evening. He sautéed mushrooms and onions until golden and fragrant, then added pieces of marinated chicken, and the wafting aromas filled the air. Antoine was also preparing roast potatoes, which he had wrapped in aluminum foil and placed in the embers to cook slowly and absorb all the smoky flavors of the fire. The cheese he had saved for last melted gently over the potatoes, creating a delicious combination of textures and tastes. "Look at this feast, Max," said Antoine, glancing at his four-legged companion. Max, his eyes fixed on the food, seemed to fully approve of his master's culinary choices.
They shared the meal under the awning, the warmth of the fire and the gentle rain creating an almost magical atmosphere. Antoine savored every bite, appreciating the simplicity and depth of flavors. Max, for his part, received some pieces of grilled chicken, a well-deserved reward for his exemplary behavior. After dinner, Antoine settled comfortably by the fire with a cup of hot tea. The rain continued to fall, but it was now only a soothing murmur in the background. Max, lying at his feet, seemed equally content, his eyes mild and his breathing peaceful. Antoine took a moment to send photos of their getaway to his family, writing a few words to describe this calming and revitalizing experience. The evening progressed quietly. Antoine opened his book again,
picking up his reading where he had left off the day before. The firelight danced on the pages, and each word plunged him deeper into a state of absolute relaxation. He no longer felt the need to hurry or think of anything other than the present moment. Looking around him, Antoine reflected on how much comfort and serenity this getaway had brought him. Nature, despite its harshness at times, had a soothing and revitalizing power. Max's faithful and loving company made each moment even more precious. As night enveloped the forest, Antoine and Max prepared for their last night in this paradise. The fire slowly died down, leaving only a few glowing embers. They hurried into the tent, ready to fall asleep to the soothing sound of the rain, lulled by the tranquility of nature. The next morning, Antoine awoke to the soft, steady sound of rain on the tent canvas. The night had been restful, and he felt revitalized.
Max snuggled against him, lifted his head, and looked at him with sleepy eyes. Anton stretched, savoring the warmth of the sleeping bag, before getting up quietly so as not to disturb Max. He stepped out of the tent and was immediately struck by the fresh, damp air. The forest, shrouded in mist and bathed in rain, possessed a mystical and soothing beauty. He prepared a quick breakfast of hot coffee and a few biscuits, sharing some pieces with Max, who eagerly accepted them. The silence of the forest, broken only by the gentle patter of rain and the occasional sounds of wildlife, created an atmosphere of perfect tranquility. After tidying away the remains of breakfast, Anton began to take down the camp. He carefully folded the tent, stowed the sleeping bag, and packed up. All the gear was in the old 4x4. Max, ever curious and faithful, followed closely, sniffing here and there as if to make sure he hadn't left anything behind. Anton checked one last time that he hadn't forgotten anything, then settled Max onto the back seat. The 4x4's engine purred softly as it started, and they left their campsite deep in nature under a light but persistent rain. Anton felt that this escapade had brought him lasting inner peace and decided to repeat the adventure next weekend.